Today I'm going to be talking about the problem of youth unemployment in the European Union. And I'm going to be talking about some of the measures that the European Union has taken in order to combat youth unemployment. And I will use one term, NEETs, N-E-E-T-S. And NEETs are people who are not in employment, education or training. So if you're ready, we'll make a start. Ladies and gentlemen, when I was a child growing up in the United Kingdom, I remember my grandparents telling me that my generation had never had it so good. The standard of living of people in the United Kingdom had been going up for a number of decades, technology had been advancing, the quality of healthcare had been improving, etc. Now, I remember at the time that I found those comments rather irritating, but I have to say that in retrospect, I have to admit that they were probably right. Until now, people of all past generations have been able to say the same to their children and grandchildren as my parents and grandparents said to me. Unfortunately, this is now no longer the case. According to the World Bank, the youth of today will be the first generation of young people to experience a lower standard of living than that enjoyed by their parents. And some commentators are going even further than that and describing the current generation of young people as a lost or sacrificed generation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we don't need to look far to find the main reason why this is the case. Basically, employment, or lack of it. Having a job is, of course, intrinsically linked to one's standard of living. We're currently in the throes of an economic crisis, and jobs are a scarce commodity all round. But they're an even scarcer commodity if you are a school leaver or recent graduate. Now, my parents tell me that when they left school, at a time of near full employment in the United Kingdom, what concerned them was deciding what to do for a living, making their minds up about what job to take. And the thought of not having a job at all never even entered their heads. Conversely, the youth of today are worried that they won't find any job at all. Indeed, a survey of final-year university undergraduates in the United Kingdom has shown that as many as 60% of them do not expect to find a job in the first year following their graduation. Now, let me give you some figures to illustrate just how big a problem we have on our hands here, in the United Kingdom and across the EU as a whole. Let's have a look at the youth unemployment rate, which describes the number of people under the age of 25 who are currently out of work. At present, the youth unemployment rate is more than twice the rate for the adult population as a whole in most EU member states. Taking the figures for the EU as a whole, the youth unemployment rate in the last quarter of 2013 stood at 22.7%, whereas the general unemployment rate for the adult population as a whole stood at 9.2%. And indeed, there's been a dramatic increase in youth unemployment in almost all EU member states over the last 4 years. In other words, you can say that young people have borne the brunt of the economic crisis. Now, with a pan-European crisis on our hands, it would seem logical, surely, to look for a pan-European solution, which is where the European Union comes in. As you may know, last year the EU struggled to agree the so-called multi-annual financial framework, which is a 7-year budget for the years 2014 to 2020. Now, during those negotiations, there was considerable disagreement between the institutions and the member states on key aspects of the budget. For example, on how much money should be made available for the administration of the EU, for the day-to-day running of the institutions, that is. However, one thing they all agreed on is the need to act to address youth unemployment across the EU, and I'd like to go on now and tell you in a little bit more detail what measures they've decided to take.